Your bulletin shows one reading this morning, and there will be two. The first is, as indicated in the bulletin, it's from the book of Matthew. And I will be reading chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. Very familiar reading, I'm sure, to most of us. We often refer to this section as the Beatitudes. Now, when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And our second reading this morning is taken from the book of John. It is chapter 15, verses 1 through 12, also a very familiar passage, I'm sure, to most of you here. In my Bible, there's a little title at the beginning of the second section called The Vine and the Branches. This is Christ speaking. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, he can do nothing. If anyone does not remain in me, he is like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into a fire, and burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be given you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this, so that my joy may be in you, that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word this day. The grace of the Lord be with you. Grace is a word we often use in the church. If you look for a definition in the dictionary, you'll find many. For us, in the church, I expect we most often associate the word grace with the sacrifice and forgiveness of Christ for us in definitions like mercy, clemency, pardon. There are other definitions of grace, not quite so profound as pardon, like leniency, reprieve, forgiveness, charity. And other definitions of the word grace, like kindness, kindliness, love. And I like this one: the freely given, unmerited favor and love of God. Freely given, unmerited. In that same list of words under grace, that list that included kindness, kindliness, and love, is the term condescension. Now, I thought that to be a mistake in a dictionary to link grace to condescension, until I looked up the definition. The voluntary assumption of equality with a person regarded as inferior. The voluntary assumption of equality with a person regarded as inferior. Isn't that exactly what Christ did? The Son of God, lowering himself to become one of us that he might be able to freely give his unmerited love. Gives new perspective, I think, to verse 12 of John 15. Not of what Christ had done, but what he was about to do when he said, "My command is this, love one another as I have loved you." He may just as well have said, "Lower yourself to those you find to be inferior as I have done, and love them as your equal." Tough challenge. Particularly for us these days in the Methodist Church, as we publicly proclaim to all, even those we do not know or trust, that we offer open hearts, open minds, open doors. Another interesting word we use in the church is blessing. Once again, we look at definitions, and there are many. Blessing. The invoking of God's favor upon a person. We recall the Lord's Prayer at one point says, "The Lord bless you and keep you." Blessing, a favor or gift bestowed by God. Her family is truly blessed. Blessing, approval, good wishes. Her father gave his blessing to the marriage. Blessing, thankfulness. By the grace of God, he was saved. There's that word grace again. One of the things I find in common with all of these definitions for grace and blessing is how deeply personal and spiritual they are. The kinds of words we tend to reserve for those who mean the most to us. Kindness, forgiveness, charity, devotion, praise, thankfulness, approval, good wishes. I'm not suggesting that we would not offer the same to the stranger in deepest need who walks through our open door, but the reality is that we are most comfortable inside these walls, invoking grace and offering blessing to those with whom we share the comfort of this place week in and week out. We may not all know one another well, but we know at least in part that we are safe here with one another because we come to this place on common ground, just like a family. In many ways, like a family. Given all that we face outside these walls every day, should this not be a place of comfort where we readily find kindness, charity, good wishes? And if not here, then where? Begs the question of exactly what is church? Is it a building, a place of worship, sanctuary? I don't know about you, but if I had to choose a priority among those three definitions, a building, place of worship, or sanctuary, for me, it would be sanctuary. Sometimes we get so hung up on denominational and church doctrine, policies and history, plans and budgets, and the trappings of real estate and mortgages, we tend to forget that we are here to be a family. To offer one another blessings and kindness and charity and leniency and forgiveness. And to invoke God's peace on one another in the face of the brutality outside. Sometimes I think we forget that. Sometimes caught up in the midst of committee meetings and financial reports, trustee updates, event planning, even debating which color of cloth to drape over the cross during a particular season, sometimes we forget this is a sanctuary, a place of divine protection in which to find leniency, kindness, forgiveness. sometimes so full of what we think church is to be that we lose our sense of why we're here, or what our mission in this place should be, for all who seek not simply open minds, hearts, and doors, but the great promise of sanctuary, the great blessing of family. Last week, Debbie and I traveled to Michigan to visit family. It was a graduation open house for the youngest of the nieces and nephews, and it was Father's Day. Debbie and I are in our early 60s, and we have all 4 parents still with us. Our dads are both 86, honestly suffering these days with the failing bodies that come with age. It was good for us to spend time with them. It was good to listen to them, as despite the certainty that they are closer to the end than the beginning, neither is giving up. But speaking of getting back to some of the things they enjoy, reassuring as the resilience Debbie and I have relied on for so long from both of them is what we have come to expect. Whatever the future, Debbie and I frequently speak of the great blessing it is to have them here. The great blessing that our adult children have had all 4 grandparents their entire lives, and that our parents have been able to enjoy their great-grandchildren. As you would expect, the situation for each has caused us to reflect on our lives with these 2 men who have had so great an influence on our lives and on the lives of our family. I can't speak for Debbie, but for me, my father-in-law taught me about offering to God the talents he was given, not trying to be something he's not, never suggesting what the church should or should not be, but giving what he could. Truth is, he understands money. When he retired almost 30 years ago, he and my mother-in-law joined a Methodist church that was struggling and rudderless in the money department. Today, the building is in excellent condition. There is a second pastor for the youth and a house for that pastor, and an endowment fund that now provides scholarships of $500 annually for as many as 6 to 8 students each year. And the church has grown. Now, he didn't do that by himself. He was and is one of a group of dedicated folk in that place, but his talent and his inspiration to others moved all to rise to the challenge. And then my dad. In my 35-plus year professional career as an architect, I've worked with all kinds of men. Highly educated, not so educated. Powerful, not so powerful. Extremely wealthy and individuals who struggled financially. Most ethical, some not so much. I realized some years ago that I measured every man I met by the deep and consistent character of my father, by his steadfastness to principles I have yet to find elsewhere, anywhere. I know every man who had a good father elevates that man to a high plateau. But I truly took a hard look as objectively as I could, and I could and found no one who measured up. I learned from my father that a principled life lived earnestly every day is priceless and a challenge of greater worth than any challenge I could find elsewhere. Debbie and I have been blessed and strengthened by the devotion, praise, kindness, leniency, and approval of 2 good men who provided sanctuary for 2 wonderful families. You might say we have been graced by the freely given, unmerited favor and love of God. We are all well aware of the blessings we have experienced, each of us. And we know that our children realize it as well. And we are all strengthened as a family by that blessing. Should it not be so for this family in this place as well? If we are to truly provide sanctuary for others, is it not important that we know more of the things that have blessed and strengthened each of us in our own lives? Is it possible that in knowing more of one another, we increase strength in all of us, and leniency, kindness, charity? A stranger who walks through that door. I'm going to take a bit of a risk this morning. Where I grew up wasn't a Methodist church. On Sunday evenings, we had testimony services. And some were more scary than others. Sometimes the pastor would just say, if anybody has something they'd like to say, please share with us. Other times he would say, Mary were first. And when Mary was done, she would turn around and she'd say, Steve, you're next. And it would go on for half an hour. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to take a risk. As we are a family here, should we not know more of one another? As much as we already know. If we are to move the mission of faith forward, should we not strengthen the bonds between us? I'm asking just now that you share one of the great blessings of your life with the rest of us. Doesn't have to be a lengthy dissertation or a historical account, just a few words that convey a blessing in your heart that has come to define part of who you are. Yes.
I'm happy to be married to my husband.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
The family came together and buried my mom last Friday, and it's just good to see all of my sisters and brothers pulling together, getting things taken care of for her. And the headstone was very nice.
Well, and that provides tremendous comfort knowing that everybody is together and pulling together for him. Thank you. Yes.
I've been blessed with a wonderful family, and I'd like to share that my mother, Sharon Spartan's incredible mom, her birthday is 74.
Happy birthday. Happy 74th birthday. Thank you.
Maybe I shouldn't have said the age, that was probably a bad thing. But anyway, it's her birthday.
Yes.
My faith, my family, and my friends.
Faith, family, and friends. Can't beat that. Yes.
This church.
This church.
Jackie and I were both born and baptized this church.
This is part of who you are. Very much so. Yes.
I've had incredible parents. As I grew up, as I've learned, as I've been challenged my entire life, it's for me, we had nothing and we had everything, every moment of the day. And it's just been amazing. And after all this time, God brought me a fiance that I can say is very much like my parents. It just fits right into my life.
So congratulations. You are indeed blessed. You know, when you say things about you had nothing, you had everything, I'm often amazed when I talk to older folks who lived through the Depression and they were kids, and their parents may have struggled terribly, and they don't even know. I mean, they know it. But as children, they were loved, and they were cared for, and that was the great blessing. Others? Yes.
I have a daughter-in-law who's been such an inspiration to our entire family for her love, her acceptance, her generosity. She showed us a whole different way of living and loving other people.
Tremendous blessing, yes. Yes.
My parents were true to me and always helping me realize my dreams and helping me to inspire so many book goals.
Hard to beat that. That's terrific. Yes.
I have a wonderful stepmother who told me to marry this wonderful man. Is that the only time you listen? I listen to her more often. My poor father.
You've learned a little bit of something about one another today. It increases the bond. It increases the strength. The reading from John 15 is, I suspect, very familiar to most of us. The vine and the branch. While it is indeed a lesson for all of us, keep in mind he was speaking to the disciples, a family in many ways, a sanctuary of friends, where each could speak with the assurance that they would not be chastised, probably corrected once in a while by Christ, but a trusted circle of colleagues who lived within the walls of that circle. Christ's message is very clear. He's speaking of his relationship to them and their need to stay in that relationship if they were to bear fruit. Is there any reason to dispute that Christ might not offer the same message to a family of good church-going people to whom he once condescended? Remember that word. In other words, a family of good church people, like all of us here, for whom he lowered himself to those who were inferior and loved them as his equal. Is there any reason we should not hold ourselves to that same standard of love in the sanctuary of this place, offering one another blessings, invoking the Lord's grace on all, and knowing that in such blessing and in his grace we are protected and have been strengthened, not as separate, lonely individuals, but in the bosom of this family. In every respect regarding the health of this place and of one another, in every moment of time you each find sanctuary with the members of this family, led by Christ. You are to one another the branches that bear fruit. Christ is the vine. But I believe with all that is in me, he never intended that we gather as strangers focused solely on him, but gather to hear his words, buoyed by the blessing and strength of the sanctuary and grace of this family he created. This family in this place. So my title of my sermon, what do you do with a blessing? Despite so many good things about this church, we share some of the struggles of many other churches. Most obvious is the loss of a number of individuals and families over the last couple of years. Quite a few if you sit down and count. I'm not privy to the finances of the church, but it would not be a leap of faith to suggest that the loss of people has had an impact on the budget. We could probably discuss and debate for hours reasons why. But just now, hearing, I think it is important to remember that the core strength of this place is that we are and should be first a family who finds sanctuary in one another, a family that offers pardon, leniency, kindness, forgiveness, charity, devotion, praise, thankfulness, approval, and good wishes. This is a place where the family may argue about one thing or another, but in the same breath run to help the antagonist when they find themselves in distress. I have no answers for the issues we face here at Faith, except maybe a starting point in the answer to the question of what to do with a blessing. And it's pretty simple, and I shared it with the kids. Give it away. That others in this family might be strengthened. Allow your personal experiences of grace and blessing to become another rock in the foundation of this place, that those who hear it will come not only to hear more, but to offer what they can to build up the family, to reinforce kindness, charity, praise, approval. Give your blessing to this family. It will strengthen them. It will strengthen you. It will find its way back to the vine, who will in turn nourish the branches so that the family will always be renewed. A few of you offered a taste of the blessings that have impacted your lives, and we are all better for it. On behalf of the family, I thank you. Not easy. For those of you who simply could not overcome the fear of speaking, I'm going to give you another chance. In the fellowship hall, there are a couple of large white boards, and there's a title across the top, and it simply says, Faith Family Blessings. And I'm going to leave a couple of pens. I'm going to leave the boards here. And I would ask you to share a blessing on that board. And if you have the courage, I'd ask you to sign it, so that the rest of us can be strengthened by you. And we can offer what we have, that you might be strengthened. I can't think of a better thing for a church family to do. Amen.